Hey guys, I'm Mike, and welcome to Tell Me What I'm Doing Wrong, the video series where you send me your art and I send you a critique, which hopefully helps you get better and helps me get better and nobody cries. That is the goal. Today's art comes from a gentleman named Nathan. He has sent me a bunch of pieces of art, and then he also wanted to know about exhibiting at comic conventions, which is something that I do. Most recently, I was in Chicago at C2E2, and coming up, I have, in June, I think, I have Heroes Con, and then after that, Miami in July. Those are the only ones I think I have coming up. But, this is stuff that I'm super familiar with. All the art he sent me is traditional art, which I love. Clearly, I'm going to be working digitally today, but most of the stuff that I do is traditional, so I'm happy to offer advice with either. So we're going to start with this Princess Leia piece. The first thing I notice when I look at this is that I know this image. I know your exact reference. It's a super famous photo of Carrie Fisher. And just in terms of proportion, which is what I'm going to... Anytime you send figurative art, as in character art, proportionality is and the silhouette is the first thing that I'm going to go to, and that looks spot on. So spot on that I find it weird that a lot of these lines seem to be very unsure and unpolished. I do see some wandering pencil underneath, but that I had to compare it to the photograph. And this is the photograph, right? So this thing is warped a little bit because the paper got very, very wet. But if I pull this photograph directly over top of it, and then we'll I line it up. What do you see? Even though that's stretched, that's so close that it's got to be lightboxed, right? And there's nothing wrong necessarily with lightboxing. But the reason that I can tell that you did that, and there are plenty of artists, and I include myself in this group, that could draw this silhouette almost in perfect proportion with just their bare hands. But I don't think you did that because the line quality on the outside just, it doesn't look right to me. It looks, these thick, chunky lines and these thick, broad strokes of shadow, to me, they look like, to my eye, someone that needs to work on rendering. Someone that has maybe an untrained eye when it comes from seeing light to dark, from 0 to 1, or however you want to look at it, right? These lines are so tight up onto those shadows in the photograph, it means that you don't feel comfortable even if this line is here. And there's very little difference in that look, other than this is a much sharper line. And it's not because it's digital versus traditional. You can get lines that look every bit as that sharp, because you can see there's some anti-aliasing on the outside of this line. It's not like some solid black thing. And we're only working it. I just left it. I used the actual photo, so this is 72 DPI, so it's not a big deal. And so, look, if you want to lightbox and transform a photo, there's nothing necessarily wrong about this. But you need to work on understanding the drapery and the folds. And instead of lightboxing, if you have a clear vision of something transformative that you want to do, right? Don't do this. This is a shortcut that's not benefiting you because there's already intrinsically something you need to learn. You need to learn how to draw drapery. You need to go to the Met archives or whatever and just start doing studies. And the drapery is always the best because it really there's tons of middle values that you need to make this look good, right? And you don't have to necessarily get a Conti crane and really grind it out. You can just use this and a smudge tool and just create folds in here and where they go and how they go. And that is really, really, really going to benefit you in all drawing from now until the end of time. And it will hopefully either, if you had cleaned up some of these outside lines, like I probably wouldn't even have thought that you did that if they were, if they had the right kind of movement and sweep to them. But there's something very labored about these lines. And it's just from lack of experience. And that's okay. I think what you did here is really cool. And it's a neat idea to have a sort of watercolor version of this. But if you didn't lightbox it, it probably would look wonky, right? This is more sellable, let's just say, if you're going to take this to a con or something like that. But you're going to limit your evolution in the future until you put the work in. So my advice is take shortcuts once you've gone the long way around. Okay, so that speaks to the form and figure. And now that I realize I've already talked 5 minutes just on that, this is probably going to be the only piece that we look at. Also, when using reference, I'm going to use my own work for an example. Here is a mixed media painting, a Leia portrait that I did, like super recently. Anytime that I have extra time, I do things like this because this is the type of stuff that I take to cons, because I split my booth, like literally with tape or something. It's half extremely abstract, bizarre palette knife painting that's all like pop reference, and some of it is comic stuff, and then the rest of it is my mixed media, kind of what I would put on the page of a comic book cover or something like that, because I work in very distinct styles. But if you're going to take work to a con, and you sent me several work in different styles, try and break them up visually, because you do not want people are going to give you one glance at a con. It doesn't matter how good you are. I could be standing there, and I have exhibited across from some of the great artists of our time. And there are people with better marketing that win. Because for some people, being at the con isn't necessarily about making the most money. It's about finding your audience. It's about engaging with people in the industry. And if you're just going to a con to try and make your table fees back, you're really going to want to have identifiable styles, even though it's so funny that I say that because I do literally everything. But at the con, I'm a certain thing. I'm a persona. So start working on developing that visual identity that you can have up that people will latch onto. That was sort of convoluted. But anyways, here is the reference photo that I used. And as you can see, I kind of, there's a lot of red in her skin tones, and I changed her expression, and her eyelashes eyebrows are completely different. I bent her hair in a different way here. I don't know if you know this, but my wife has super long hair, and like your hair would have to be 20 feet long or something for this to be real. So, I always thought, like, when I was a kid growing up, I thought that, like, oh, a girl with really long hair could, like, potentially have this hairstyle. And I thought it was so funny when I see my wife, who's got super long hair, and she's got it wound up on the sides like this, and they're just like little balls. Anyways, that's an aside. All right. So, I noticed I didn't fold the drapery the same way, and I kind of transformed it with color, and I gave it kind of a decent likeness. But, you know, I think that an important aspect of art is transformation, right? And you have some transformation. You know, it's certainly not in a photographic style, but there is this rendering here in the face, and I've got some huge issues with the face. The hair I kind of like. It's kind of cool and liquidy, and I mean, maybe I would do some things different, but I don't see, like, there isn't something that super jumps out at me other than these little puddles and kind of a bit of sloppiness. You can't be sloppy tight, right? You can be, like, I have this furious, energetic style that until I really understood what it was that I did, it didn't look right. There was something always wrong and sort of ununified about what I did because I have such an energy and fury in my strokes, and it only corrected itself with time. And I mean, I can't tell you how to. I can't teach you time. That all I can say is you just have to work and work and work and tirelessly work, and you will get better. the obviously the biggest problem with this thing, and I think a lot of people who are looking at this can tell, is this nose. It's a disaster, an absolute disaster. This is not. A lot of times if you're doing a comic book or fantasy thing, you can sell it like, when people critique you can sell it like, oh, that's the way that I see it, or whatever. But you were drawing Carrie Fisher, and Carrie Fisher, Princess Leia's nose is not pointed like this. Shadows don't work like this. And then it also appears with the rendering as if she has a chaw in her mouth. I think that you wanted to create her rather strong chin dimple. She has a pretty pointed chin. But what ended up happening is, this is just an unsophistication. It's funny. The more skilled the artist, the more they can cheat stuff like this. Like, I feel, and this is sort of a jerkish thing to say, like, I could take this photo and completely transform it. I could change her expression. I could do whatever I want. And you would, not only would you never know that I lightboxed it, you would never, it would be a different thing. And because this isn't a different thing, like, I really, really, really can't impress upon you enough that, like, don't do this. Shortcut once you have a better mastery. And also your watercolor here, which I can see you've tried to do rendering, and I don't know if this is Copics and watercolor. It's very textured. The paper is probably pretty textured. That looks like salt and watercolor. You need to learn how to lay your washes either super, super unevenly. Like, go look at the work of David Mack, who was absolute master of sort of washing on top of, layering it together. Or you need to be more careful, because whatever's going on in here, where you have these spots, then you have rendered spots, just doesn't look good. I don't know. The chin shape here kind of got lost. To make her look a little bit more human. So, hard lines, hard black lines around a woman's nose just are usually not going to work. Around the lips, it's fine. So. Try and put this back into proportion a little bit here. I'm not, oops, don't want the ruler. I'm not using anything but a smudge tool here. That's it. Little watercolor spot, nothing wrong with that. Girls are harder to draw than boys, especially if you're going to use lines. One line slightly out of place will just savage your piece. I could I could literally just dash with a slash with a pencil on any 9x12 sheet of paper and still draw a guy's portrait on top of it. It's that forgiving, and just a line that's a little bit off with a girl can really, really, really mess up your piece. She has full lips. I'm not sure where you decided the cutoff was. No, a lot of times what you'll see at cons are people that are just binarizing images. Let me see what that looks like. Something like this, and then doing art on top of it. And when and it's the same. I think that like my criticism of a lot of those pieces is I see the same mistakes that are in this piece, in that, like, all right, you can use that as a tool for transformation, maybe, but if you're going to use that, like, you need to know how to paint. There's this also a weird disconnect that, like, drawing and painting are somehow the process might be different, but like like knowing value is knowing value. Like it doesn't matter whether you're using a pencil or whatever. All right. And then we could kind of fill in the blank here and finish that out. We're not going to get too much into the eyes. I think that kind of my point has been made in the sense that you need to render more. No, look, if you are attached to this idea of the line, like this Borderlands, like you want to combine sort of a painted look. Although, I mean, it's watercolor Borderlands, we'll call it, right? Like, with women and their small features, just be gentle. That's my... You don't even need that much. See, and you can even be fussy. Just small marks can make such a difference. If you can just get them in perspective and get the line width the right way, and as you zoom this out, just that little itty bitty pecking. No, we're not even. Just say we. Oops, it's not the right color. I'm not sure. Well, I'm not sure what this is. It looks like white ink that was put over the black ink. And anytime you use like Dollar Brownie or a correction pen or something, it typically doesn't come out white. Like it's some other color. In this case, it's sort of a blue color. I don't know where this orange is coming from necessarily. It seems to be sort of underneath, like you over painted. Because as you can see, the paper itself isn't super white, and maybe there was more contrast. Or at the very least, you know, the picture was probably kind of dark. But I'm not sure what I'm proving right now, other than I was going to just paint in her face. So those are my, the background is cool. The piece is cool, but overall, number one, don't take shortcuts. Number two, render as much as you possibly can fabric. I think that it will help you. Even when you're just trying to represent the fabric as these few lines, you need better line quality. And it can be fussy and messy, and that's my thing half the time. But to do it right, it is going to take a lot of practice, and it's going to mean doing it wrong. Like, look, this line in here should be cleaner. Like, it should be, it should either be cleaner or it should just be a disaster. But what it is, it's uncertain, and I get that feeling across. And you know, do face studies just with a pencil. All you need is a pencil and your finger or some type of blending tool, and you can really get a lot of work done on the couch a couple hours a night. So let's move on to another one of your pieces. I spent way more time on that one than I wanted to. I'm just going to put 5 minutes into these next two, and then we'll call it a video. Pull up. Let's see, we've got a Thor. Let's do a comic book piece. It's a big file. And all right. So we've got this Thor piece. I don't know if this is an 11 by. It looks like it might be an 11 by 17 board. Let's zoom in and see what it's made out of. This looks like Copic marker to me. I don't know what this green stuff is, but I do know I'm going to have a problem with it. All right. Right off the bat, we see more of these sort of uncertain, chunky lines, which if that was the entire aesthetic, it would be fine. But you also have sort of these uniform hatch marks with sort of brought in cross hatching. This is a very unevenly rendered piece. You've got sort of this almost airbrushed Copic, which would be fine. But then you have these wandering thin black lines through it. To me, this rendering style just doesn't work. You have what appears to be a breastplate, but his breastplate is the same color as his skin. That doesn't feel good. The yellow and this green. I don't really want to get into color theory, but let's just look at this. Just bring this down to black and white. You have like these highlights that are actually a darker value than, I mean, they appear to be, I don't know. It's hard for me to describe exactly what I'm seeing other than you're putting shadows inside of highlights. Light doesn't work like that. So that's something that you can work on. The anatomy here, we have, I mean, that's probably the biggest issue. This chunky black line under the arm itself is not foreshortened correctly. The thumb, this is not how a thumb looks. If this hand really existed, either that thumb is as long as his forearm and has 4 joints in it, or that thumb is coming out of sort of like if there's a couple ways of looking at this. Like you have this hand mass here, right? And the thumb comes out back here, right? But you have it wrapped here, 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 and then around. So it would have to be like a 4-jointed thumb. Alternatively, you have this hand mass right here. And I like that you put your blacks are in the right spots under there. But for that thumb to be there, was it growing there? Like on top of this knuckle? Like it's not human. And that would be fine if it was some weird creature or whatever. You could argue one way or another. This is Thor. He's a man. That's not correct. It looks wonky, wonky, wonky. The way that these are the proportions here. This, well, I'm not sure why this is facing. How are we already seeing the underside? This is, I assume, the underside of like a T buckle that would have like a deep underside, and we could see a little bit, but it's tilted way, way up, like as if we can only, like think about it. He'd have to have like an erection to be pushing that thing up. That's not good, right? We don't want that. I think that the shoulder's not in the right place. This is forward. If in 3-dimensional space, his body has come forward like this, then this shoulder has to be pushed back. We can't see that much of it. It needs to be like this, and then we could still see the bicep on his arm, and the hand could theoretically be in that same place. The hand sizes seem pretty much okay to me, but is this supposed to be a bicep? I mean, look at your arm. And maybe you don't need to be jacked to understand that this, I mean, is this mass right here is supposed to be his bicep? Or, I mean, is it, because the bicep is split, is this it? That shadow down the middle, it's either really, really wrong or it's wrong. or it's, I mean, does Thor have stitches? And then it's also that if this is the mass, right, then how is there this big black area? How is that even attaching? Where is the crease to the forearm? Where, I mean, in this scenario, think about where the elbow would be. The elbow's right here. Think about what that arm would look like. It would be, I don't know, 2 feet tall, but not in like a Arnold Schwarzenegger way. So you separated the mass, the sort of the bicep mass here, and I mean, a lot of these shadows, this is just anatomy that it doesn't. It's not compelling anatomy. It's not anatomically correct. Maybe you could argue that this like breastplate thing is like shaped like this. That would be fine. But if this is meant to mimic what's actually underneath, this isn't very sophisticated looking. It's too symmetrical, and the forms are too even and not organic. These forms right here just don't. That's just not the way that a human body looks. And is this bent? This being bent in here is actually like if it were, you know, like if you had a line like this, that would make more sense. And I know that this sounds so critical, but I'm just trying to be helpful. I'm not trying to be mean in any way. I'm just trying to point out the problems that I see, and I'm not always right. His teeth are oddly colored. The tilt and expression and his head is actually well proportioned. I think that the helmet design, that yellow just needs to go. If you meant these to be golds, there are plenty of great YouTube tutorials on how to paint gold. Gold is a huge number of colors that it's got dark spots and light spots, and gold is very little of gold. The color gold is yellow, and if you're going to do it with traditional paints, there are great gold metallic paints that help mimic that. You need yellow ochre, and you need to bring in some dark oranges and some dark reds to kind of. I mean, gold is something you really need to learn how to mix and paint. But when you just paint it yellow like this, it's just kind of. It looks like you're not trying very hard. And I know you can do better. The rendering, I can't imagine any form that is going to be equally rendered around all sides like that. Like it just doesn't look good to me. And it doesn't speak to show the forms other than outside of it appears that you're sort of rendering a sphere, and that's a good exercise, you know, to draw a circle and then draw the cast shadow, and then sort of, you know, you learn how to hatch up here, and then you go this way, and then you know, and you kind of figure out this is how light goes or whatever. But the juxtaposition between the blacks with the color underneath, and it's just not. The hair is probably the most sophisticated part. That there are parts of the hair here that, I mean, it looks really good. He did some good things. I'm not sure what these big black lines are in here. Probably just either cover that all up or get those out of there. The cape is a nice color, but there seems to be some techniques in terms of painting, just how to render evenly with paint and how to pick colors that you may want to invest some time in. This is, look at all these are like blocky lines like this, and then over here to represent lightning you have these organic lines. And is this two different types of lightning? Like I can't think of a piece where, and I did 10 minutes on this one. I'm sorry. Let's move on. Your lightning's mismatch. This hammer is wrong. That is not how this thing works in perspective. So. And here's where I get pet peevey. If you're going to learn one thing about art, you can draw very, very badly. Where you can have a vanishing point over here. You can do a 3-point, a fisheye, a whatever, right? You can do any kind of perspective you want, but the whole piece needs to be, or needs to be in that perspective. So if you have this here. Okay? And then you move this line this way with no, you know, I mean, where is the... I mean, look at that. It's like this crooked, weird thing. This line should be like this. If this is going to be your starting point. Or, if we're going to leave the same bottom, and the bottom is going to be right here. Yes, then this is going to be like this. It's just a cube. It's a cube with a cube, and it needs to be drawn right, otherwise it looks not great. Handle looks cool. I know that my voice can seem like I speak with kind of a lot of force, and like I really don't want you to think that I'm being mean, but yeah. So there's Thor. Let's do one more piece and then call it a day. I'm going to do the Carnage piece because I think that the Venom piece that I was sent was pretty good. There's a lot less here to talk about. Cool toned paper, cool Venom liquidy, weird drippy thing, right? Does anyone see the problem? The problem is value. I know what this is supposed to look like. And even though there are these white highlights, all of this is just blending together. I can't see it. I can't see his face. Whoops, that's not what I wanted. What do I want? Oh, hue. There's great separation between this. Here's where some of those thick lines may have, really helped you. But let's use our color picker. We're in black and white, and let's use our color picker and find where we're at. So this is probably closer to white in the actual piece. This is since you took a picture of this, it's probably a little bit darker. But the relative contrast between the things should hold up. Okay? So you can see there's a huge difference between these two things. But let's move into here. Now we can see this sort of nose mass, and we can see that it's darker here and this part pops up, and kind of the same here. But this is where it kind of all falls apart. It's like a checkerboard. There are a million things going on, and I cannot tell where the teeth are, where the mouth is, where the anything. And when that is the case, maybe you need some thicker lines. Some chunkier spots to give this thing, mass. I'm just drawing these sort of. And then, when it comes to this tongue, maybe the highlights should really, really, really be in there so that you can see it. Maybe. Because I know exactly what Carnage is supposed to look like, and I just can't make out what the shape is that you're going through here. But I think this is a super cool piece. And it is, something like this is something that you would see on an 11 by 17 print at your average comic show. As far as you taking your stuff and going to comic shows, I'm not going to tell you no. But if you don't regularly attend cons, you might be overwhelmed with the number of, even at a small event, with the number of choices that people have. And you really, really, really need to stand out. Not only stand out in terms of and it's not even necessarily stand out in terms of skill. It's stand out in terms of what you do is either different than everybody, because there are a lot of people that they're just there to make money, and because of that, it's like these people that are taking prepackaged merchandise, which is going to be more refined than anything a regular artist can do or bring, and they are importing huge quantities of it for dirt cheap, and then they're selling it for any amount of money that they can get to make a profit. So as an artist, you are going to have to connect with people, and they're going to have to want to buy your art because they like and support what you do, and they see and they find value in something that somebody made and something that's not mass produced. And there's a lot of nuance in there. And so when you aren't super hyper developed in your skills, and no one is going to walk past your art and it be the best thing at the con. Like, no offense, right? Like, you're not going to blow anybody away with like, and people are attracted to weird things. Like, just the things that are attractive as an artist are not necessarily attractive to a regular person. And all of these things that you sent me, these portraits and stuff, they're not telling stories. If you can have way less skill or way less refinement, if you're going to tell a great story and try and sell stuff with just circles and text, I would totally just tell, if just the art wasn't there yet, but the storytelling was. But you are trying to sell people pop art figures with your style of art, which is not totally refined. And there's going to be a lot of other people that are doing that because it's one of the easier things to do. Like this, I don't consider something like this to be, I mean, I do a lot of portraiture, and I think that I'm fairly skilled at it. So I think that mine is a little bit special in the sense that, like, I'm really trying to capture some type of emotion or convey something or transform a character or something like that. But it's not really transformative art, right? This isn't like really reinventing Leia or using Leia. A lot of things that you see at cons that people are attracted to, which I don't do at all, which is the quote unquote clever art, mashups and things like that. And I'd rather be clever one step further and really recontextualize something and transform it that way than like, put Deadpool on the cover of the Nirvana album and call it, Deadpool, or something like that. It's not that, I think that those things are great, and I think that they're great for kids, but like, I go to cons because I'm an illustrator and I'm looking for people to collaborate with, and it's not about it. Selling at cons is not any factor in the way that I make my living. It's something that I do because I enjoy it. And sometimes it is extraordinarily profitable, and sometimes you break even for 3 full days of work. Or sometimes, I mean, there's a lot of, don't do it because you want to make money. That's my point. But do it for the experience. And even when I tend to not appreciate the marketing side of things because I think that it's a manipulation, and I have this weirdly real, artisty, authentic thing that costs me money all the time, right? I believe in really representing who you are and not tricking people. And the entire point of marketing is to trick people. So I will forever lose money because of that silly ideology that I have. Well, it's not silly. It's something I really believe in. But you need to be fairly sophisticated in your marketing and your table setup, and it's expensive, man. Even for an 8-foot table display, like, it costs a lot of money. You're going to sink a lot of money, and you're going to buy things that you just end up don't work for you and the way that you sell your art. My garage is littered with grates and stuff. I do other like fine art shows and stuff like that, so that maybe all my stuff doesn't go to waste. But at cons, I bought a bunch of stuff that I wanted to use for cons that I never ended up doing. So, tread carefully, wade into it slowly. Start with a small event, and it will push you to make things, and you're going to learn about printmaking, and you're going to learn how to do all sorts of things. Just from a trademark standpoint, keep your editions small. Don't put characters you don't own on coffee cups. You can draw and paint your physical art anything you want. That's freedom of speech. But when you start reproducing it, you can run into trouble, so be wary. There's a lot of weird laws out there. and it's not really enforced, especially with comic book stuff. At cons, you can be right there next to DC Comics selling prints of Batman. It's fine. It's not fine, but it's fine. It's a weird culture. But I wish you the best, and I think that you're certainly talented. But like all of us, there is work to be done. So I hope I've been helpful. I hope I've helped some other people as well. And I'm probably just going to finish painting this Princess Leia, this half paint face, because it's bothering me. All right. Thanks for sending me your art. Anybody else? Traditional art, digital art, pop art, anything figural. I'm not going to. I can't offer a critique on your abstract collage made of Pacific Ocean garbage and gouache. Like I'm not your guy for that. But any type of figural art where I can talk composition and color theory and all the things that we talked about today, I'm happy to do. My links are below. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.